What was that?
That's my phone.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, I asked Stephanie. She said she's here.
We see a lot of books behind you, Beverly. We don't really see you. You might want to adjust your camera. That's better. Yeah, that's better.
How to set up.
I sure wish I could see y'all.
You ain't missing much on my end.
Either.
What do you see, Lisa?
The little black box in the middle of my page spinning saying waiting and just
Oh.
me.
That is weird. Huh.
Mm.
Yeah. I do not know how to help with that one.
We're live.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the June 16th work session and call board meeting of the Bexar County Board of Education. We're going to go ahead and get started tonight by looking at where we're going to be when we meet again for our regular session. Ms. Bramlett, you will have the invocation.
Okay.
And then we'll have to approve it. And so we'll have the approval of the minutes, and we will have, we need to amend the agenda tonight because we do want to, it's already on there with the school lunch committee. Okay, we're going to talk about that tonight. And if we want to go ahead and do that, Stephanie, you're the chair of that committee. So if you want to go ahead and do that, we'll get started with that. You want to talk about the meeting?
Yes, so we had a committee meeting yesterday. And Lynn, do you want me to go ahead and outline, or are we just adding this?
Well, we've got this on here for discussion. I forwarded the minutes from the meeting last night to the superintendent. So
Okay.
He's going to be working on this.
Sure.
And obviously this was short notice he's already working on some of this, I know.
Right.
So if Dr. McMichael, if you want to say something about that, we can just go from there.
Why don't we present the recommendations first?
Okay.
And
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, we'll let Dr. Huff do that.
You want me to do that, Stephanie? I'll be
If
glad
you don't
to.
mind. Yes, please.
Ma'am, we, Ms. Stevens, Ms. Krause, Ms. Bramlett, and myself have met twice. We were tasked with, as everyone knows, there are past due balances throughout the system for lunches, charges for lunches. Past due balances is extremely unacceptable. And we were tasked with trying to come up with corrective action to take to try to adjust those past due balances to zero. That is our goal, and that's what we want to accomplish. And our meetings covered a lot of ground, and we met probably a total of 3 hours doing this. Recommendations, and I'm going to outline 7 recommendations that we have, and I'll make them brief. At the end of each of the recommendations, if there are questions or comments from anyone, I'd like to hear them. Recommendation number 1 was that the school lunch payment software be replaced. My School Bucks has very low ratings on the Apple App Store and other sites that rate such software. And it's not very user friendly, and we felt that it needs to be replaced. That's school lunch payment software. So that's number 1. Any comments or questions about that? Chris, do you have anything?
Well, a little bit. Really haven't had time to really dig into these since we just got them this morning. But we definitely want to do a review and do an evaluation of what else is maybe out there.
Okay.
I'm not sure how many different platforms there are, to be perfectly honest at this point.
Right. Well, and we don't either. We didn't go that far, but we just know the one we have seems to be unfriendly for users and might be something better out there and deserves a look.
Yep, definitely.
Recommendation number 2 is that the school lunch payment policy needs to be changed. it is not clear that charging meals is not allowed, and that needs to be clear, that charging meals is not allowed. The policy contradicts itself within the body of the policy on this, and that needs to be fixed.
Okay.
Free and reduced form, we want a free and reduced form to be completed on every student in the system at the beginning of each year or upon enrollment.
Yeah.
We don't feel that that should be optional, that parents should be able to decline filling out that form. We should require it, just like we require immunizations forms to be completed or whatever else is part of the packet. We want that to be completed by everyone. I think if we can do that, we might pick up, I'm sure we'll pick up a lot of students that qualify for free and reduced payments, and that will do nothing but help us. So we want that done. We
Yeah,
also,
I do have a comment on that one, Doc.
Okay.
Unfortunately, and I don't disagree with the committee at all on that, but the USDA eligibility manual prohibits that. We are going to look at some ways we can get it in front of them all, but we can't force everyone to turn one in.
well, at least if it were in the packet and we're not forcing them.
Right, and we've done that. We're going to step that up too. Yeah.
Right, and if at least it's in everybody's packet, they may look at it and say, well, I guess I ought to fill this out, and we can get that done. And even if
Absolutely.
it's mandatory that they do so, I'd like to see it, and I think the committee would agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
We also want the payment grace period that starts off each year to be eliminated. I know we do that, I think, to allow people to get their forms completed and turn back in, but this encourages inappropriate charging and is not the message we think we need to send. And it starts a lot of students off in debt with the system, and they just never catch up. So we'd like to see that eliminated. And that's all there is under recommendation number 2. Anybody else got comments or questions? Anybody on the committee?
Just to add to that, so when we say no grace period, what we mean is that during that time, it's still treated like a charge. People are still following the protocol to try and collect if a child is charging, to let the parent know that they are in violation of the policy. So there won't be a grace period where we just kind of let it go and see kind of where we land when the forms get returned. So that's what we mean by that, is that in the beginning, we started out being, it's prohibited. If you do it, you as a parent are in violation of school policy.
Yeah, we sort of, by having that grace period, we sort of violate the policy ourselves by not allowing charges. We're beginning of the school year by allowing charges. And that just to be the wrong message.
Okay, can I ask a question about number 2?
Sure.
You say payment policy, eliminate charging, no charging, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so a student comes first day of school, doesn't have money for lunch, what happens?
Well, you and I know, and I think we all know on the committee, that children will not be denied a meal.
But there will be consequences
There
for
will be
parents
We're
who
gonna
do not pay their children lunch.
Right. There will be consequences if we allow them to charge, but it's going to be, somebody's going to have to take ownership of this process, and we're going to get to that here in just a second, Ricky, but you're exactly right. What do we do when Johnny doesn't have the money to pay and he needs to eat? We're going to let him eat. We're not going to do that, but there's consequences to that will be addressed as we move through some of these other points.
Okay, can you enlighten me to what that would be?
Sure. Number 3, we recommend a daily call system to be implemented to notify parents that their child was not able to pay for their meal and that they are in violation of the school policy. And that has to be done daily. And we need someone to take ownership of this. And we're encouraging and asking the Director of School Nutrition and her team to take that daily call system over to parents, so that we're going to see parents notified daily that they're delinquent. The message that will be sent will reiterate the policy and provide methods of payment and consequences if they fail to pay. I think this item is perhaps the most important one of the group to result in some sort of success with our program. If we don't implement some sort of daily call system to let people know that your child didn't pay for his meal, what are you going to do to correct that? And if you don't correct it, this is what will happen.
Have y'all come up with consequences?
We have, other than frequent calls, I mean, there's very little power that we have. But one thing that we think, any other comments about number 3, the daily call system? Anybody else? Chris, what do you think about that?
I think that's something we probably can pull off utilizing campus and apparently, but we'll have to get with the folks that know the technological ins and outs. I think it's probably doable, but until I can explore it a little bit next week,
Yeah, well, that's good. We think there's a lot of calls being made to parents anyway.
there are. They're doing them at least weekly, I know. So a daily might be feasible. Again, I'll just have to.
If we could do that, and if we could get the school nutrition department to take ownership of that, I think taking it out of the cafeteria managers are not equipped to do that. I don't think they're trained to do that. And this everybody's got a lot to do, but it seems like the principal is also not necessarily the person to do this.
Yeah, that's always a tough thing.
This is a federal program, obviously, and we think the nutrition director should be doing that in her team.
Our hopes are that we can utilize the automated system, the same system that calls you and your parent and tells you that your student was absent today, or tells you. So we're hoping that we can utilize that in some way so that it can be a little more automated and easy for everyone. But, you know, once again, then what's important to us is staying on top of it all the time.
Correct.
I'd like to make a comment on that too. Guys, this is Lynn. This is about accountability. We're feeding every child in our system breakfast free. Okay. If parents can't afford lunch, that's fine. Fill out the form. If you can't afford lunch, send the money. We need a way that these parents can prepay their kids' lunches so that this shouldn't even be an issue. This is the 21st century. We have the technology. Parents need to do this, but it's about accountability, and it's about accountability on the school system's part too, because for years we have just let these accounts build up, and then we get to the end of the year and it's like, oh my goodness, we've got $18,000 that we haven't collected, or 21,000 or whatever. So this is a federal program. We get reimbursed for this. It is going to be up, I think personally, to the director of school nutrition to work with her managers. If they're the ones who are doing the reporting every day, somebody's got to be making phone calls, and maybe the school principal simply needs to say to the school lunchroom manager every day, how many kids didn't pay today? Who are they? Have you made the phone calls? What can I do to help? Until we get this under control. This is not rocket science. I think if we get this off at the beginning of the year and everybody understands the expectations, then we will be able to move forward with this and make a huge dent in this. We have churches paying some of these bills. We've got schools paying these bills out of money in their budgets that could be spent on teaching and learning. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's too much to ask for parents to pay for their child's lunch or to fill out a form.
Lynn made a great point last night in our meeting, and I'd like to, reiterate that. We kind of talked about, while we've been dealing with COVID-19 in the summer, anytime we cannot physically get to our children or they cannot get to us, it's always very important as a system that we feed them. We have buses that have gone out every day. These children, we all our heart is that these children are all our children, and we take that very, very seriously. And that is why we want to feed them every day, and we have to have money to be able to do that. But we are not going to hold children accountable for adult problems, but we are going to start holding adults accountable. And we expect, like Lynn said, if you can't afford it, then you fill out the form, and that's great. If you're having problems, contact the school. Nobody's trying to be the big bad wolf here. If you're in contact with the school, it's going to be fine. But for these people who just don't pay and don't call and don't care, that's neglect. And we're going to start calling it out for what it is. And we're going to take it very seriously. So I think it's just going to be a change in culture, that this has just been allowed. And it's been, I know, I'm not saying nobody has tried, because I know that they have, but it hasn't been taken really, really seriously. And we are adamantly determined to change that.
So
And that,
my question is, when you said, and Ricky had asked him, I didn't want to interrupt him, but on two, and Dr. McMichael made the comment, if you say that we can't hold, because I guess it's the federal government or whatever, and make them, you can put it in their packets, but you can't make them or have a deadline that they turn that packet in, and then they continue to not have the money, then what do you do? What do you do? If there's
Lynn, I'll let you cover that one. What do we do? Look, she went away. I asked her to answer.
well,
She
let,
went
let me
away.
say something.
I don't want to answer that question. No, I'm kidding. Seriously.
Don't cry out of that.
Well, I think if we implement what we've come up with, we will see a huge increase in the amount of money that we collect. Are we going to collect all of it? Probably not, but there is another solution here too. And Dr. Huff's going to get to that, I think, in his next point, but I'll just go ahead and say it. We are all mandated court reporters. If we feel that children are being neglected, if we have any reason whatsoever to feel that a child is coming to school hungry or having issues at home, it is our job to report that to our school social workers and to get them involved and to get DFACs involved. So what's going to happen here going forward is if these children are, if we're having to feed them and the parents are not cooperating, again, all they got to do is fill out a form saying that they qualify, or pay for the child's lunch, or call the school system and say, I'm having a hard time. And right. And all of that will be considered. But if these children are just constantly showing up and not paying, and they're eating, and we're expected to feed them, then that becomes an issue for DFACs to get involved. And I can assure you, having worked as a CASA volunteer for years, these parents do not want DFACs showing up at their door. They don't want a school social worker showing up at their door saying, I'm sorry, you haven't been sending money for your child and you haven't filled out this form. Do you want to sign the form, or do you want to pay the bill? Because otherwise DFACs is going to have to get involved in this. And if we do that, I think we'll see a huge improvement in the collection of these funds.
Well, and more importantly to me, and something that I felt the whole time, is that if something's going on and a parent truly, I'm not talking about your child forgot their lunch money today, okay? That person's going to get a call and they're going to go, oh my gosh, and they're going to go log in and they're going to fix it, okay? Mistakes happen. It happens. I'm talking about little Johnny, who nobody ever follows up. Nobody calls. He charges and he charges and he charges. Nobody can ever get his mom to call back. That is indicative to a bigger problem. And we, as as a board, and us as a committee, I know, all of you, and I know all of your hearts, and I know how important it is to protect the children. So as a committee, we felt like, it was important for lots of reasons, but most importantly is it's to make sure that our children are being taken care of the very best way that we can provide. And we're making sure that if they're not being taken care of, that we let somebody know that we have some suspicion so that they can be checked, because they are our priority.
One thing about this DFACS notification process going through social workers is that is confidential. It will not be public. The child will not be singled out as someone who's not paying for anything. And so the consequences to the child will be eliminated. This will, again, will protect the child. He'll still get fed, but we're going to go after parents who are just simply not paying. If they're not paying and they can pay, then we want to shake their tree and get this done. If there's a problem and they can't pay, we're going to have methods of payment that will fix that problem for them. So I think for this system, for this process to work, we've got to get ownership, and it's got to come, I think, and Chris and his team can figure this out, but I think it needs to come from when the committee thinks it needs to come from the director of school nutrition in her office to get these things done. Any other comments about the DFAX referral and how that process will work? That will be a very infrequent occurrence, I believe. Very infrequent.
I believe so too. Debbie, do you have anything you'd like to add? Debbie's on our committee too, and she gave some really good feedback and input last night.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this committee because it's very important to me that we get it right. And I was the one that was saying that if we could get that eligibility form from everybody, not just people that have an issue with being able to pay, but also people who can pay, just so that we have that on record. I think it's important, and I appreciate understanding what the USDA requirements are, and I thank you very much for learning about that, Dr. McMichael. I think that if we work on some of these plans, I think it's a good plan. That's just me, but I think we've covered everything that I can think of, Stephanie.
Next item is number 5. The committee feels that it's very important that the committee members themselves look at what's happening on a month-to-month basis with this process. So we're going to request that reports be sent to this committee monthly as to how each school is succeeding or failing in this process, so that we can understand what's going on and how it's working or not working. So we're requesting monthly reports to the committee. The committee has decided that we will meet the Monday before the Tuesday work session of each month to review the reports from the schools, and we will report that to the full board on a monthly basis.
That's doable.
Any questions about that? We also would like to see some sort of, and I don't know exactly how to word this, and we didn't come up with a good explanation, but we would like to see a monthly award be presented to the school of the month that seems to be the best overall nutritional practices, including collections and other parameters such as farm to school relationships, etc. We'd like to see a monthly award to the school that's practicing, is presenting the best nutritional practices to their students, and that's a way of awarding those schools that have the best collection ratios for students that need to pay. And that's something I think needs some work. That's a recommendation that I have yet, and I don't think we clearly understand how to do that, but we think that would be a way of recognizing the schools and awarding those that are doing a good job. Anybody else in the committee clarify that a little better than I did?
Dr. Huff, I would simply say that, we started these attendance awards every month because we were having a problem with attendance, basically, both of teachers and students. And so that's how that was implemented several years ago, and it's worked well. If there's one thing I know about our schools and our system, our elementary, middle, and high schools are extremely competitive with each other. And so they like being recognized for the good work that they do, and they're highly competitive. I think this is just simply very similar to what we did with the attendance issues that we had before, and it can be a very positive thing for our school system. I know that, you know, everybody says, well, we're going to feed the kids one way or the other, and it's not high on our list of priorities, but it needs to be, because there needs to be accountability on the part of everybody, on the part of the system for collecting the money, so that that's not money that's having to be spent to pay for food that could go to other things. And it's also the parents' responsibility. And what I have found over the years is that the more we hold people accountable, the more they will be accountable. And that's really what this is all about.
Very well said, Lynn. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I want this award to be a positive thing and not a negative thing.
The
We
golden,
want it to be given in such a way that it doesn't just talk about how much money we've collected, but how well we've done in providing nutrition to children.
Right. And that's very important. Okay.
I think I remember when Dr. McMichael, we had this conversation, you know, back when we were talking about alternative lunches and such. And I remember Dr. McMichael, and you know, his heart is like ours. He thinks all of these children are his babies too. And he said, you know, I don't think that we're ready to do that yet. I don't think we're ready for alternative lunches because I don't think the big people have done all they can do at this point. And that's something that I think that's where our committee is let's make sure the big people are being accountable for this, the parents and the system, because, you know, the children at the end of the day, they can't pay for their own food. They can't work. They can't come up with money. But, you know, with holding the parents accountable and having an expectation from the system of what we want to see every month and staying on top of it, I feel really good about where we're going from here. I really do.
Very good. Last item is number 7, and we are requesting that administration look into communications between parents and the schools to make sure that the communication is clear and that people that are communicating are properly trained in policies and procedures so that the communication is consistent across the system and within each school. I think that could again be something that Ms. Lefroy and the director of school nutrition, her team perform with the cafeteria managers to make sure that they're properly trained in how this whole process works. So we're asking that the superintendent and the administration assist in getting that training done and communications to be clear and succinct across the system. And that concludes our recommendation. Any comments or questions about item number 7? That's pretty much it. I think we've covered a lot of ground. I think what we've covered, the 7 recommendations that we have, are maybe not all as easily done as we think they will be done. I think number 3 is getting ownership so that somebody's making these daily calls is critical to the success of the whole process. If we don't make the daily calls and we don't follow up on students that are charging, then it's not going to work. I appreciate it. Appreciate everyone listening. Thank you.
We appreciate the committee's time and work on this, and we will get to work on this starting tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
Thank you, Dr. McMichael.
Okay, next on, did anybody have any other comments before we move on from that? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the discussion of the tentative school reopening options for school year 2021. Dr. McMichael, it's all yours.
All right, I've got a new share here. Just give me half a second to find it. All right, where are you? It's not that one. It's that one. There we go. Okay, you got it there? Good deal. All right, yeah. We wanted to, the big topic on everyone's mind everywhere you go, which is kind of limited now, but it's out there. Every Zoom meeting we have and everything we talk about is school going to start, and if so, how? So answer the first question, we will have school, one shape or form. What I've got tonight is I want to present to the board and to those watching the where we are, what our main goal is, some of our backup plans and where we are. Want to preface this with saying that a lot of work has gone into the part where we are now. Also, we have an incident command committee that meets every day except Fridays. We meet in the morning every day and go over a lot of these things. I also meet with all of the local surrounding superintendents at least once a week, and that's our discussion topic also. And then there's also statewide meetings that we're all pretty much on the same pages for most parts. So a few local variations here and there, and of course it always will come down to where we are locally when it comes down to COVID and where we are with the spread and those type of things. The Department of Ed has I've got to minimize this little piece here. Has given us a little bit of some guidance here. It's the Georgia's Path to Recovery. That is also included on the e-board link there if you haven't seen it quite yet. But I went ahead and pulled out the main piece of that for us for what we're talking about tonight, and that's addressing the community spread in the schools. Working with the CDC, the Georgia DOE, and the Department of Health have come up with some scenarios and some guidelines. These are not mandates by any means, but guidelines for 3 different areas. One being in the green, the low and no spread, which is optimal. The minimal moderate spread, which is, as it says, is kind of the moderate. Kind of, I think we feel like we won't have this until later in the week. They're actually going to be pushing out a dashboard that will kind of direct us as to where they feel each region of the state is as far as these goes. We feel like right now we're probably right around the low to minimal and moderate, but I hesitate to put that in writing because we want to wait until we get that from the Department of Health. And then of course the substantial spread, which is the full bore remote learning type things. So I've gone ahead and kind of color coded our reactions to that the same way. And let's see. All right, why are we not? There we go. And then again, more with their guidance, they've given us again these guidelines. If we're in low to no spread, traditional school in the school buildings, open, implement some more preventive practices than we've been used to, which we are well along the way with getting those incorporated. Minimal to moderate spread is got a lot of different pathways we can go down. One is the traditional school buildings open with a little more stricter social distancing. Hybrid model, which you hear in the news quite a bit, and we've talked about some, which is more of a limited or a staggered use of school buildings. Talk about that a little bit more in depth in a moment. And then full distance remote learning, which we are all well acquainted with and love very, very much. And I am being facetious with that. That's what we've been doing since March. And so that is also an option there. And then over to substantial spread, and that's really back to the totally distance remote learning. Might include just targeted closures, say if it's one school, one portion of a school, some short-term closures, or back like we have been doing with the extended closures. So those are kind of the DOE guidance. Of course, they base that also with the working with the Department of Health. So our goal, and option 1 is our goal. We want to start back on August 4th, as we have planned all along, as our calendar says. We want to get our students and staff back on time and on campus. We all know that's where the best learning goes on. That's where our kids are comfortable. It's where they're fed. It's where a lot of these things go on that are the intangible pieces that we've missed while we've been out on remote learning. We are working very heavily and very hard on it, retaining some of the remote learning. We've kind of seen this as an opportunity. We've been talking about it for for a while, and we've piloted a few things over the past year or so of Barrow County online digital learning. We've had some good success with the small pieces that we have worked on with that. And we've had you know, it was a mixed bag, definitely with the since March, but we've had some good success. We've had some teachers doing some really fantastic things and really that have taken to online learning. Of course, we've had some that struggled also. Same thing with the kids. We've seen students that have done really well with remote learning, and we've seen a lot of kids that struggled mightily with it also. So we want to try and do our best to incorporate the remote learning into what we do as we open up. For our fragile learners, you know, we have some kids out there that have health issues, things that they deal with. We want to be able to have that for them. And we also have some kids that, you know, really just did really well with that. And so we're working very hard in teaching and learning and with technology to get that together. And we hope to have that ready to go using the platforms we're already familiar with, the Google Meets and those type of things as we open back up. So we'll I'll give you a timeline here at the end of when we're going to have some more information on some of those things. But we're the board, you know, a year or so ago, well, a couple of years ago, we started talking about the cameras in the classrooms. These cameras will now be in the high schools, middle schools, and a couple of the elementary schools at the end of the summer. So we're looking at ways to hopefully leverage those, hopefully some live streaming, definitely some recorded classroom activities and lessons from the teachers and those type of things. So those things are really, we did it for a lot of reasons, but we did not know this was coming, but it definitely can be looks like it will be a big help for us as we move into that. So that is option one, and that is what we are right now. If everything goes the way it's going and things stay, that's where we're headed. Option two, how do I get that thing off of there, y'all know? Option two is if we find ourselves in a minimal moderate spread, the yellow zone. One of the ways that we can deal with that is a bit of a delayed on campus. So instead of starting on the 4th, we might start on the 7th, we might start on the 11th. Gives us some time to get some more protocols in place and a few other things. Also gives us potential to move the online remote learning, to move to that, maybe do away with the calendar we've been looking at there. Would do away with some of the breaks between the October breaks and those type of things, and allow us to hopefully go ahead and end up maybe around Thanksgiving. We feel like, and everything we're hearing and reading, that the big possibility of a major resurgence of COVID-19 would be during that November to January timeframe, as we saw lately. So that is another kind of, that's one of our backups as far as that goes. So start date to be determined. Option three, and this is if we find ourselves again in the minimal, moderate spread or in the substantial, and that's starting back on time, but with remote learning again. And for me, that's a very problematic way to do it. One of the reasons, you know, I can't speak highly enough of how well our teachers and principals and assistant principals and counselors and everyone just were able to really turn on a dime and get something we had not really planned for up and running in a day, or a couple, you know, over a weekend, literally, with our remote learning when we had to go out. One of the reasons I feel that worked as well as it did, not just with us, but with everyone, is they had that time in the classrooms. The teachers knew their students, the students knew each other. So they building that relationship that we all know is so key to the educational process. That's going to be really tough if we have to start back with remote learning. Not saying we can't do it and we won't make it work, but that's going to be a really tough thing to do. So that is lowest on my list of options personally and professionally. I would hate to see us have to do that, but we will be ready if we have to. Somebody have a question? All right. Other considered options, and these are all in that kind of catch-all middle of minimal, moderate spread. And these are some other things that we've talked through and when we have some fleshed out ideas on. The first one is one you may have heard. We hear the hybrid model a good bit. On-time return, rotating on-campus schedule. So, for example, half the students may come on A day, the other half on B days, or A weeks and B weeks. Basically, trying to cut the population in our buildings in half, basically, and work through it that way. There are a lot of moving parts to doing that. At first blush, that sounds like, hey, that's a great way to make that work, but it's probably the most difficult in many ways. Just everything from which bus stops do we pick up at, to lunches, to, I mean, all of those things. And then you still have the potential for a spread, because you still have the staff, which is not going to be rotating A or B. So it's a lot of this is risk versus reward that we're looking at. We have to weigh all the risks and weigh all the rewards and see where we fall with that. The next one is an on-time return with a rotating on-campus schedule, remote only for 9 through 12. Most of the feedback we've gotten from parents and students has been that we saw more success, of course, with the high school students that can kind of take care of themselves at home and online. The lower you go in the grade level bands, the less effective it seems to be. So that's another option there. One of the things we we knew this going in, but it really struck home during this the exercise since March, is that we have students out there with very limited digital access. A lot of us tend to take it for granted, just like power these days, that internet and Wi-Fi is there, and that's not true in a lot of our homes. So we have to deal with that. So even if we wind up with remote learning, we may have to look at a way to bring students in that have digital access needs only. A lot of moving pieces to that one also. We did have a percentage of students that we call it just went dark during the pandemic, and we've tried to reach out, and teachers and staff at the schools are pulling together lists of those kids so we can kind of see what's going on there. We are prepared to put out some mobile Wi-Fi spots next year if need be, and some other things along those lines. But but that's another way to keep less of a footprint, physical footprint on campus, is just bring in those students with digital access needs, and maybe some with some learning needs also there too. And then another one, the last one, is a staggered return to schools by level, elementary, middle, high school. That one's not very well fleshed out, to be honest. That's one that's just kind of cropped up lately, and it's just a way of staging and keeping, using some of utilizing our buses and utilizing our buildings in a different way, where we start off with maybe elementary school, and then we can move into middle school and high school. So those are those three. Our tentative timeline, right now, we plan on July 6th to have more detailed plan, including all the precautions that will be in place, and we'll share those publicly with of course, with the board, but with all of our families and community folks out there. July 8th through 17th, we're going to ask parents at that time to let us know if they are wanting to opt into an online remote learning situation. We will have the process fleshed out by that point. One of the questions that has come up a good bit is, will it be something we can come in and out of and in and out of? And while we don't want to say you have to do it for the whole year, if you start, we will look for some natural breaks for whether it's halfway through the semester or at the end of a semester or a holiday, these type of things. So it's not just a chaotic churn with that kind of thing. But we are very committed to getting that up and running. And then in July, pre-planning, open house dates will be announced in July. And then we want August 4th to be the first day of school. So all that said, to say we have plans, we have a main goal, but things are still in flux. So we are watching daily what's going on from the Department of Health and other folks, and we're just kind of moving around. And at this point, I'll open it up for some questions.
Chris, Butch Huff, couple of comments and a question. The community spread obviously could move up or down over time, and
Right.
and that would change as we go, I guess, what our
Correct. Yeah.
options are as we move into either an up or down thing on the spread.
Correct. Yeah.
That could happen. I like the idea, make sure I'm understanding this correctly. I like the idea of optional remote learning for children and parents or guardians who are at risk.
Mhm.
And that would be their informed choice, I guess, to do so.
Correct.
Is that the way you're looking at
That's
that?
the way we're looking at that. Yeah. And we're actually hoping to be able to open that up to some that maybe even beyond those that are at an increased risk that just, for whatever reason, aren't ready to send their students back.
What can we do to help those? Obviously, we want to inform them about their choices and their risk and help them make that decision. But if we have a parent or a child that's at risk and they do not have digital access in their home, how can we get partnerships involved, or can we do something to help with that? Can we ask for partnerships to get digital access in some of these?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And we have some, we were awarded some mobile hotspots from the state here last month. We also have some in the budget moving forward. So we'll be able to hopefully work with all those. Hopefully there won't be a large number of those, but we definitely would be able to work with them one-on-one. For example, we already work with Hospital Homebound a good bit, and so all those are individualized programs that we do. So we would definitely be those that are in those very defined needs. We definitely want to work with them and make it as accessible as possible. Great point.
You said by the end of the week that we'll sort of know what the Department of Health places.
That's what we're being told. I can't swear, but they are working on a dashboard basically for us that we can check daily and see where our region is according to their specifications.
Well, obviously, it's a good overview, I think, when it gets down to really implementing such a change in schools to get kids to cooperate with
It is.
all the things we're going to have them to do is going to be difficult. But I think your overview is very, very well said. Thank you.
Thank you. School is going to be different. Even starting back on August 4th and running the calendar that we expect, things are just going to be different. The precautions that are going to have to take place, the flow of instruction. I told the principals and some of the other staff the other day in one of our Zoom meetings that, at this point, it may be time to mourn a little bit of what the past was. And now it's time to shake it off and move forward and make the best out of what we're going to do going forward, because it is going to be different. But we're going to do the absolute best we can, and we're going to learn every day, and we're going to do the absolute best we can to give every child in this school system the best education possible that we can. But it's going to be
Dr.
challenging
McMichael,
times.
this is
Yes,
Lynn.
ma'am.
Yes, you're right about that. I think my primary concern is that these kids need to be back in school, not just because we know they learn better when they're interacting with other students and with teachers, and teachers are there to help them on an individual basis, but also because of the economy and the fact that their parents have had to go back to work. It was one thing to shut down the state for a while, but we just can't economically sustain that. So I think it's important, and you've done an excellent job of this. It looks like there's just going to be a variety of ways that we can help these children. And I just commend you for the work that your entire staff has done on this, because I'm sure that just like everything we do, we're going to be very bold about this.
We are, and I appreciate that. Appreciate the kind words with that. It's and it's going to be, we could get in and we could be rocking along just fine, and we could get a month or two in and things could change. But you're exactly right. The economy, I feel like you do, has had about as much as it can take. People need to get back to work. That's one reason I don't like the hybrid very much. I think that would be even harder, I think, in some ways for the day on, day off for our parents and families out there. So it's a challenge, but we're going to do our absolute best to get us all back and get those buildings open and full of kids.
Dr. McMichael, this is Ricky Bailey. I want to echo what our chairman said about the hard work that's gone into this, and Dr. Huff, also the plans that y'all have. Any idea from the state about how our FTE may be affected on options 2 and 3?
No, that has not been addressed that I've seen. Now, my guess is it would not be, there would have to be some allowances, and the state DOE has been very good about making those allowances so far. Another issue that we'll have to deal with, of course, is testing at mid-year. You know, how are we going to pull that off? Testing, superintendents and the state superintendent rather have gotten together and are asking the federal government for a waiver on testing again for this year. So we're very hopeful that will come through. FTE will be kind of along the same lines. We'll have to there'll have to be some changes in our reporting, I imagine, but they've been very good to flex on those, so I'm not too worried about that one.
Okay, well, I would hope that they would see online learners, people that are at risk and staying at home, that, you know, they would count just the same as somebody having to be in the classroom.
Yes, I don't have any doubt that would be the case.
All right.
Dr. McMichael, this is Debbie. I have a connection with a community member who works as an infectious disease specialist with the CDC and hospitals to develop initial reaction plans on the onset of COVID. I'd like to be able to pass his name along to you as a resource for us. That maybe he could help us in some of the things that we're trying to develop. Would that?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll get that information and get that to you. I think that he would be a big help for us.
Sounds great. We need all the allies we can get with this.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I've heard from a few teachers. I know we're giving the students an option for remote learning. And I've heard from a few teachers that agree that we need to be back in school in August, but that they are not comfortable being back themselves, whether they're taking care of someone at home.
And that's something we're going to have to deal with and have been talking about extensively in planning. We are going to have some. A number of our teachers fall into the at-risk area, and so we have been, and we will be polling to see who might want to, maybe some in that want to do the online learning pieces. Is one of the ideas that we're working through, and then just through the human resources and the personnel issues. You know, of course, we'll honor any health issues and anything along those lines, as we normally would. But I do, one of the pieces from the federal government has been, you know, the COVID piece that, I forgot the name of the act, but it, you know, that covers them on that. And we definitely be working very closely with them individually, and folks over in planning and personnel are already working on that and already talking with some of our teachers on that too. But I would love to see it that some of those folks be the ones that could actually kind of head up the remote learning piece, because really don't want to task too many of our teachers that are teaching every day to a full classroom to do the remote learning also, unless they can stream it. So having some that are just dedicated to that, or heading that up for the school, individual school, or some things we've been talking about. So great point.
Dr. McMichael, I have a quick question regarding if we are still under social distancing guidelines come August. How will we address that? How will we be able to address that on our buses? Has anybody, is that more of a Dr. Green question?
Well, it's, and he's welcome to chime in. I know he's online there, but we have, that's another daily discussion. You know, the original CDC pieces that came out, I think we figured out we'd have to put 12 kids on a bus to meet, you know, those if we were to see them as mandates, and they're not, they're guidances, but which isn't really worth running the buses, to be honest with you.
Sure.
But yeah, the transportation committees and Dr. Green and that they are meeting and discussing, and again, that's a statewide and nationwide discussion right now. No clear answers yet. Just to be perfectly honest, there's just there are some ways that, you know, we can isolate students that may not be feeling well in the front of the bus, you know, have masks on hand, those type of things, and then take them straight to the nurse's office when they get there. Seating charts, which we have had in the lower grades, we may have to do with the upper grades also, so that we can limit and trace contact if there is a sick student there, that we know kind of who is around them, so that we can follow up on that. So there are some pieces to mitigate it, but it's not going to be a perfect thing. It's and the same thing in the classrooms, to be honest. We just, we have limited space for 14,000 students, so we will do the best we can, and we will try to follow as many of those guidelines as we can, and we will, like I said earlier, we'll change up the flow of instruction to have a lot more hand washing and those types of things. But as far as
So
things,
it's not it's just a recommendation at this point. It's not a mandate that we practice social
correct,
distancing.
yeah, all
in
the things that
classes.
came out from the CDCs were recommendations. Nothing is, we really haven't had anything that's been mandated for us at this point, but we've had some very good, very thoughtful recommendations.
I bet the people who are mandated just love that.
Yeah, I bet they do.
Well, it's hard to do because
Such a delicate
it's
balance.
well, it's going to be different. It'll be different, in Daughtry County from what it is here in Barrow County.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So to mandate something across the board is just not going to be a work. And and to go back to Dr. Huff mentioned earlier, we're going to be looking at things, I'm afraid, from here on out, much like we've done with even with norovirus, where we it may be a school that we have to, one of the schools may have to be quarantined, or a hallway, these type of things. So there'll be some more, not as drastic measures as shutting the whole system down, but we will have to have some plans to deal with any cases of outbreak or contagion. So those are things we do with flu. At some points, and we haven't had it happen in a while, but we have had schools that have an outbreak of the flu in just one of the elementary schools, for example. So we've had to send those kids home, and not the rest of the schools. So I think we'll need that flexibility. So.
Dr. McMichael, I have a question when we were talking about some of these remote learning things, especially at the middle, maybe even high school, especially high school. If some of those students, or we don't have enough teachers to do the remote learning, or maybe some of those specific classes that the students may need to get, and there might not be enough teachers to teach them, have we thought about doing the webcasting so those kids can actually go in and get participate in the same class?
Yeah, that's what I was speaking to earlier with the cameras in the classrooms that we've been putting in we've been putting those in, of course, for security reasons and for professional learning reasons. But now the company that we work with is opening that up for teachers to be able to, if they so choose, to stream. So yes, that's a possibility that students could remote in. That's something we're chasing very, very quickly right now to see if we can make that happen. That would be the ideal in many ways, is to be able to have a student actually attend class at 9:30 at the high school where they attend, but do it from home would be an amazing thing to have happen.
Right.
Dr. McMichael, this is Lisa.
Yes, ma'am.
When the plan is announced on July the 6th, will we have something in place then that parents and teachers and students can see, and about the new ways that we will keep our schools safe and our students safe? Maybe a list, everything will be laid out as the changes and things we're doing differently?
Correct. That's our plan, is to have a very detailed plan, and to also have some graphical type of things also to push out. As a matter of fact, let's see if I can pull this up. This will be going out after the meeting tonight. Our wonderful PR folks. Am I sharing that? Okay. I'm going to share a different piece here. All right. What is my... That it? By the time I get zoomed down, we'll be back in school. So this graphical, which our PR folks, Shinley Roundtree and her group, have put together, basically took the PowerPoint I just went through and put it on a one sheet that we'll be sending out this evening or tomorrow morning, with all the different options, kind of just something so they can have that to refer to where we are. So we'll be doing the same type of thing when we get to the precautionary plans.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we'll move on to the next thing on the agenda, which I'm sure I'm going to see in just a minute.
It will take a second.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Back here. I got it. Watch this. All right.
There we go.
Here we are.
Okay. Looks like Dr. Green's the next person up with our support services report.
Yes, ma'am. And in the support services report, we have the communications report. I typically just put it out there and invite questions if there are any, but there's one thing I definitely want to point out, and that is the implementation of our Remind communication system. We, in the month of April, had 51,000, a little over, almost 52,000 Remind messages that went out. But after implementing that system wide and turning that tool over to our teachers to use in communicating with parents, that number jumped from right at 52,000 to over 720,000 messages that went out. So that was a much needed tool, and we were glad we were able to get that implemented before the end of school, because it was a really successful implementation. Other than that, if there are questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Anybody have any questions for Dr. Green? Well, hearing none, we'll move on to the next item.
All right, and I'm pinch hitting for Jennifer Houston tonight, so we'll start with the invoices here, and let me get that pulled up. And again, we have a few here. We have Code EHS Incorporated, a vocational federal grant, $10,300 for a web-based subscription for high school coding, and that will be over at Sims Academy. The second one there is for master teacher, comes out of the general fund for $10,599 for parapro online training for district-wide training for our parapros. That's one they've been able to do at home and will be able to do at home, so that's very timely. Number 3 is Striven Media, vocational federal grant monies again there, $14,770. These are our licenses for our virtual job shadowing with our CTAE, so that will be at both the traditional high schools and the 4 middle schools. And then Jigsaw Learning, that comes out of special ed federal funds, $20,895 for Encore reading program, and that's at all elementary schools.
Wonderful. Any questions about that? This is just for information only for the board, basically. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next item.
Then I also have the budget timeline. Again, we no changes since the last time we showed this to you. We're right here tonight on the but we'll talk about the tentative millage rate here in a little bit, and we've adopted the spending resolution already. And then we will have Ms. Houston will be having some town hall meetings and as part of the millage rate adoption process, and then we will have a July 13th final millage rate approval on the 13th of July. Okay.
Dr. Michael, are those millage rate public hearings going to be virtual, or are they going to be at the PTC?
I believe she's planning to do a blend. 1 or 2 of them will be virtual, and we're going to do our best to have at least one of them be in person with,
okay,
with precautions. Right.
Okay. Any questions from anybody about the timeline? All right, we'll move on to the next item. Looks like Joe, you're up.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. We've got our normal report there showing progress on our summer renovation work and new high school. And I'm happy to answer any questions about any of that. Like Dr. Green, I want to kind of highlight one item here in particular in our report, and that is we plan to make an application to the state for capital outlay funding for renovations to Auburn Elementary School, Folsom-Beck Elementary School, and Appalachia High School. And we're required by the state, if we're going to make application for state capital outlay dollars, to do that by the middle of August each year. So that's where we're headed. We want to get that accomplished so that next summer we can begin work on those schools. It's a similar renovation scope there as we've done at Yargo and Westside last summer, and Statham this summer. Repainting, putting new floor coverings down, new LED lights, hardening up those front entry vestibules, making them safer, putting the classroom cameras in place. And so the plan there is that we bring this to your attention now. We inform the state of our intentions, and they review our application. And once they've approved it at that level, we'll come back to you for final authorization to proceed with that application. So that's the process there for what we're looking ahead at in terms of next summer's work. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions about that or about our projects. They're moving right along on schedule and within budget. They're very pleased with what's taking place out there with our schools.
Joe and Dr. Michael, are we planning to have an official open house or a ribbon cutting for the opening of the new high school?
I think initially, we wanted to do something out there. I believe maybe at the August work session or September board meeting. I don't know if we would still want to hold that time frame or not. But the short answer to your question is, I think yes, Ms. Stevens. Just exactly what that looks like. We haven't really worked through the details of that.
Okay, that's fine. I've just had several folks ask me about it because they're excited about the new high school. So,
I would just to back up what Joe said. We definitely want to do something. It may not be our traditional ribbon cutting and timing, but we definitely want to do something as we get moving back in, because we're very proud of that building and what it represents, and the forward thinking that went into it. And we always celebrate our new facility, so we will have something.
okay. Anything else, Joe?
No, ma'am. That's the extent of our report this evening.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Joe before we move on? It's looking really good out there.
We got a lot of work going on around it, even with feeling like we're working from home and shut down and everything. Our maintenance folks and our building folks and facilities folks, they have not slowed down at all. They are getting these things knocked out, these improvements, everything from the new high school to the security improvements at some of our schools things are looking great. A lot of hard work going on. They have really been running.
All right.
Okay. And I believe we've taken it easy on you for teaching and learning and planning and personnel at this point. I don't think we have anything on that.
Okay. So, clarification of previous items.
I do have one thing I'd like to just throw out on that one very quickly. Seems to be a little misinformation I've seen in some public forums that I wanted to just make sure you all were clear on, and I know you are, but we do have some folks watching tonight too. there's a little bit of miscommunication that has happened, that the reason that we had to make some changes to the bell schedule and transportation were solely because of the new high school. That's erroneous, and I want to take just a second to clear that up. It comes from a couple of things, as you all well know, and the main two being the growth, which is really the cause of having a new high school to begin with. We've seen we're one of the fastest growing counties in the Southeast right now, and have been for a couple of years now. That has forced some of these changes in the overcrowding and transportation issues and these types of things. And the other is the elementary school not having enough time to properly plan. Our teachers do an amazing job at the elementary level, but they have been ever since we changed over, I believe it was 7, 8 years ago. That has put a very tough pull on them to have enough time to plan their lessons for students and these type of things. So that was another big pull on that too. The reason, I've seen a few comments out there that we didn't have a choice to leave it alone, and that's very true. And the reason, as we have spoken about before, is because it just wasn't working anymore due to the growth primarily and other things. But we have tried. We tried adding 15 extra minutes last year. That didn't do the trick. So we finally had to make more of a sea change than maybe we were totally comfortable with, but it will be the right thing, I think, for students down the road. Just wanted to kind of get that clarification out there and make sure that you all knew that also, and I know you have, because we've had those discussions. But I think we have seen several things. Well, the planning for the new high school, they should have planned that. Well, to be fair, the planning for the new high school started 4 years ago, and I think lots changed over 4 years, and so those plans have ebbed and flowed and changed a lot backwards and forward. So I just wanted to kind of get that out under clarification of previous items there.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you.
Chris, while we're on that topic of the new schools, I just wanted to touch base one more time. I think I'm pretty sure I sent you an email about this, about further discussing the BASA start time to be a little bit more in line with the other school. Not really, but close, just to show some good favor, since we know now that the older children really don't do so well early in the morning, giving them a little bit of extra time. So I just wanted to remind you, if you will, to continue to think about that.
We definitely are, and we've been talking about that, so we'll keep you posted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we don't have anything for the consent agenda tonight. And under new business, we've got the closeout of Yargo Elementary School renovation project. Joe, do you want to address that briefly?
Yes, ma'am. We're asking the superintendent to recommend final closeout of the Yargo Elementary School renovation project. The work was completed last summer, and typically we let that go about a year, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. But we just have to make sure all outstanding invoices are paid and closeout documents received, and we've got all that squared away. And so we're ready to submit a certification to the state so we can receive our last 10% of capital outlay dollars. So that's our recommendation to close out Yargo Elementary School renovation project.
Okay, so we'll put that on the consent agenda unless anyone has an objection. Hearing none, that's on the consent agenda for the next time we meet. Next is the architect for Auburn, Holzenbeck, and Appalachia renovations.
Yes, ma'am. So in line with the item of information about applying to the state for capital outlay dollars to renovate these buildings, we're asking the superintendent to recommend an architect to help us in the design and planning and construction administration of those renovation projects. And we're asking superintendent to recommend Cunningham, Forehand, Matthews, and Moore as the design professional for those projects. We have, of course, vetted this firm along with others back in the winter of 2017. Their pricing has not changed. And they've done tremendous job for us in the past and in current projects that are underway at this moment. So this will just help us to get ahead of the planning and make sure that we're prepared to hit the ground running next summer with these construction projects, and to order materials and get them here in time, and all those sorts of things. So we're just trying to get those wheels turning now.
Great. So we'll, does anybody have any questions about that? If not, we can put that on the consent agenda too. I think everybody's familiar with Cunningham, Forian, Matthews, and Moore. As Joe said, they've done a ton of work for us, and we've been pleased with all of it. So any objections to putting this on the consent agenda? Okay, we'll add that to the consent agenda. And next is the West Side Middle Edition project, guaranteed maximum pricing.
Yes, ma'am. So we've just talked about this process of making application and then recommending an architect. And this is kind of a good way to look back here briefly. The same process took place, of course, for the addition project there at West Side Middle School. And so we, in our FY21 application for state capital outlay funds, was approved by the board last fall. You all then approved an architect for that project shortly thereafter. And then we brought a recommendation on a construction manager that was approved last winter. And since that time, we've worked with those groups, the owner, architect, and construction manager, to develop the project and get it prepared. And so we've done that, and we feel comfortable recommending a guaranteed maximum price of $8 million for the addition to West Side Middle School. And we expect to receive approximately $1.5 million from the state as reimbursement through the capital outlay program. And this will get West Side Middle School on par in terms of the number of classrooms as our other middle schools. And we also have plans for a press box and concession building at the athletic field, again, to try to get them in line with our other middle schools. So our recommendation is to accept the guaranteed maximum price of $8 million for the addition to West Side Middle School.
All right, does anybody have any questions?
Joe, how many classrooms are we going to be adding out there?
I believe it's 24. I think we have 35 now. We're adding 24, bring us to 59.
Thank you.
Joe, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rick.
No, I was just thinking.
Joe, the total guaranteed maximum price of $8 million, does that include the 1.5 that we're getting for the state?
So in effect, we would be paying
6.5.
$8 million less 1.5.
So we're paying 6.5.
Correct.
Okay, great.
We have to pay the 8, and then we get reimbursed. But in effect, yes, we're paying 8 less 1.5. And just as a reminder, the 8 million is a guaranteed maximum price. So
right, that
can come in lower. Just and trust me, we're going to watch that like a hawk and hammer on it all the way down to the finish line, really. And I expect we'll be able to maybe recoup a little bit before we're finished.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this is Debbie. When will the project start or be finished?
We expect the project to start soon after the July 7th board meeting. Hopefully we can get a notice to proceed and just begin within a week, 2 weeks after that point. And we want to have the project complete before the following school year. So during this next school year. We'll build it and open it for the following school year.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? All right. We can put this on the consent agenda also,
Yes.
unless I hear an objection. Okay, it's on the consent agenda. Next, we have, Dr. Green, you get to enlighten us about brake shoes and drum bids.
That's such a wonderful introduction, Ms. Stevens. We do have 6 bids that we're going to bring to you tonight, and so I can understand the lack of enthusiasm there. The first one is the brake shoes and drums bid for next school year, and we would ask the superintendent to recommend approval of the low bid as highlighted in yellow on the bid tally for each of the specific brake shoes, brake drums part numbers that are listed for you there. We put this out on Georgia procurement as we did all of the bids that I'll be talking with you tonight. We had 5 vendors, 3 of which had the low price parts in different categories, as you can see there. So we would recommend that we accept low bid for each of these particular parts. Based on our usage from previous years, we would expect over the course of the year to spend approximately $62,000 out of our transportation budget.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? I think we can put that on the consent agenda too, unless I hear an objection. Okay.
You ready for me to move on?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
The next one is remanufactured engine bid. We have 3 buses currently that need to have the engines rebuilt in them. And so we would ask the superintendent to recommend approval of the low bid from W.W. Williams for 3 remanufactured engines. You'll see that they were the low bid for the total price of that. We estimate that to be at $45,545. Again, this was bid out with Georgia procurement. Depending on the condition of the core of the engine, we may have the opportunity to return the core for a refund, but we won't know that until that engine's actually pulled and the new one is put in, whether the core would be eligible for a refund. But so we would recommend that W.W. Williams be awarded the bid for remanufactured engines.
Okay. Any questions from anyone on that?
Dr. Green, this is
Yes,
Ricky
sir.
Bailey. What are the ages of these buses?
That's an excellent question. I apologize to you for not looking that up before I came to you. I was going to do that and just failed to do that. If it's okay with you, I will send you, or I'll get Dr. McMichael to send you a email with that information in it. And
Okay.
I apologize that I don't have it tonight.
That's okay. I assume they're out of warranty.
Oh, yes, sir. These are older buses out of warranty.
Okay.
Hey.
Ms. Lee, we leave that off the consent agenda till we get that information, please.
Certainly.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Green.
Yeah, yes, sir. We'll get you that information.
Hey, Ken, Butch Huff, the core, so,
Okay, moving next.
wait a minute, Lynn, just.
Sure, go ahead.
Sure, the core, they buy the core back from us if it's good.
Yes, sir.
That's the way that works.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And so now we'll do are we at the bus battery bid? Or-
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, the superintendent, we're asking the superintendent to recommend approval of the low bid Peach State Freightliner for the battery bid. This again was put out on Georgia procurement. We had 4 companies that bid on this, and the low bid was Peach State Freightliner at $92.39. We would estimate over the course of the year that this total number of batteries purchased would be approximately $35,000 out of the transportation budget.
Okay. Any questions from anyone on that? All right. Unless I hear from somebody, we'll put that on the consent agenda also.
Okay.
Okay, let's move to the next item.
Okay, this one's a little more complicated and
Dr. Huff, did you have a question?
No, I did not. Thank you. No, ma'am.
so I'm gonna try to explain
I'm
it.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dr. Green. I'm sorry.
And if you have questions, then we may have to get you a response back on this as well. But we would ask the superintendent to recommend approval of the low bid. And the way we determine low bid is based on the purchases and the ratio of types of tires and services that we needed from a tire company in FY 2020. And assuming that would repeat itself again in FY 21, we calculated what would be the low price vendor for these services and prices on tires, both new tires and retreads. And that was determined to be Athens Commercial Tire for the total package. Again, this was put out on Georgia Procurement. And just to give you a little bit more information about tires, we're buying more than just the tire. We're buying a service, and we are use retreads at a rate of about 4 to 1. We can only run retreads on the back of buses, and those are doubled up on each side. So we typically will buy about 4 retreads for every new tire that is purchased. So when you figure that all in there, then Athens Commercial Tire was the low bid overall. We would estimate spending approximately $140,000 out of the transportation budget on tires for this upcoming school year.
All right. Does anybody have any questions about that?
When was the last time y'all got, you said that it was from last year, 2020, when y'all got the bid on it last time?
I don't have the date on the last time that we got a bid on this, but I will tell you that the way they calculated the winning bid was based on the services and the tires and everything related to tires that were purchased last year, the amount of money spent and the types of tires, both retread and new tires, to determine what we may need in the upcoming year. And when you add that together, then Athens Commercial Tire would have been the low cost for us.
But we don't know how long the period of time it's been. Has it been 12 months? Has it been?
I don't know that, but I'll be happy to look for that information and share that out with you. I don't have it tonight.
Okay. All right. So do we want to pull that off the consent agenda until we've gotten that information? We'll do that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Next is the White Fleet service bid.
Yes, ma'am. So we have approximately 81 vehicles in our White Fleet, and that would be maintenance trucks and vans, SUVs that are used by maintenance, technology, transportation, school nutrition, and other departments. We have about 81 vehicles in our entire White Fleet that are get serviced throughout the course of the year. And so we put this out on Georgia Procurement, bidding out a rate for labor and markup on parts. And we would ask the superintendent to recommend approval of the low bid of Connor Automotive.
So Ken, this is labor and parts.
Yes.
Ken, where are these located? Where's Connor Automotive?
I knew you were fixing to ask me that.
Conroe Automotive is over by County Line Elementary. I happen to know that. So
Thank you.
they're here in Barrow County.
Okay,
I knew
good.
they were local, but
Good.
I wasn't exactly sure of the specifics, and I appreciate somebody saving me with that answer.
I was going to Google
Thank you.
I was going to Google it for you real quick.
Thank you. I was trying, but somebody had to answer first, so I'm glad to know that.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions about White Fleet? Okay. Speak up if you don't want to put it on the consent agenda, because otherwise it's going on the consent agenda. Okay. Next, we have the radio service bid.
Yes, ma'am. And that says radio service. There's more involved than just radio. We're looking for a company that can service our radios and also our video camera equipment, as well as our tablets on our buses. So we put this bid out on Georgia Procurement. Only one vendor met all the conditions of the bid. The other vendor is not able to provide the services that we need. And so we would recommend that we select Alpha Communications, which Alpha Communications has been doing our radio service work and camera work for as long as I've been involved in transportation, which has been at least since 2013, and have done a great job for us. So we would recommend staying with them since they were the only responsive bid that can meet all the conditions. And we would estimate this to be approximately $23,000, which
Okay.
is technically below the threshold, but we wanted to get this in front of you anyway.
Anybody have any questions about this? If not, we'll put this on the consent agenda. Okay, thank you, Dr. Green.
Well done.
Thank you.
And next is the instrument bid. Dr. Michael, are you going to
Yes,
do
ma'am,
that?
I am. We
Just go ahead.
recommending awarding an instrument bid to 4 companies that sit in the lowest bid per line item. We have a bid here that we put out for startup classroom instruments for the Barrel Arts and Sciences Academy. Was sent out, placed on Georgia Procurement website. 5 vendors responded, and we have presented you the winning bids for each item. So a lot of work went into this one. This is our classroom instruments for the first year of operations, and then as student numbers grows, we'll of course need to come back and fill that out. Financial impact, and this is out of East Bloss funds of $86,649, and there is the spreadsheet for your entertainment.
Dr.
All right.
Lamont,
Yes, sir.
do we know who put this list together?
Yes, it was a combination of, it's a pretty large committee. It was a group of course, Dr. Simpson, his assistant principal, the folks that have been hired in for band. We also work with the band director at Appalachia, I believe Wanda Barrow. So we had a lot of people working on this one.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody have anybody else have questions about this? Okay, hearing none, we'll put that on the consent agenda also. And now we get to the Series 2020B bond adoption.
Yes, ma'am. And we're going to recommend that we receive proposals on the refunding of the Series 2014 bonds. They're currently at 2.55%. We receive proposals in the acceptable range. Then we'd like to go ahead and move forward with refunding those. Tom Owens, are you still with us, Tom?
Yes, sir. I am here.
Right. You all know Tom is our financial person. And I will turn it over to you, Tom.
Okay. This is an item that some of you may recall. We spoke about this previously this spring. This is a refinance that we intended to include along with the bond sale that was executed in April. The idea there was that we would have been able to save some of the cost in terms of bond rating and some of the legal cost if we combined those sales, but we were unable to do that because of the judicial emergency. When we sell general obligation bonds, they have to be validated in Barrow County Superior Court, and when the court system shut down, we had to split this piece out and weren't able to execute it at the time. We've now gotten clearance to hold that validation hearing, and so we're bringing this issue back before you. We are pursuing it as a direct bank placement, which does save a little bit on the cost of issuance. Again, we don't have to go get the bonds rated. We don't have to have an offering document prepared. And frankly, it would take a little of Jennifer's time and attention as well if we were to put an offering document back out right now. And I know she's got a very full plate, not knowing, with a few budget items still up in the air. So we're trying to see if we can get this done at an acceptable level as a direct bank placement and avoid that public offering route, which we could still fall back and go to if we don't get something we're happy with. There are a few other quirks about the bonds that would potentially cause us a few small issues if we went in the public markets. But this bond's really shorter than 10 years. I think we are going to get very strong demand from the bank purchasers when they look to buy it. In the scheme of things, this probably isn't a tremendous amount of savings when you look at your overall bond program, but it is I expect we're going to be somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000 per year of savings, which is, it is meaningful on its own. A little less so, again, when you're looking at the overall program. I anticipate we're going to lower the interest rate from 2.55% to somewhere between 1 and 1.5%, hopefully closer to that 1% range. It's really, to some degree, this is a marginal refunding. We typically want you to save at least 3% of the principal amount of bonds when we go forward. And this kind of hovers right around that 3% mark. But at the end of the day, it is a currently callable bond, meaning we can prepay it at any time without penalty. And so our options are really move forward and have the refunding. We could always do nothing, but we move forward with the refunding and try to lower the rate. And what you're really exchanging is your right to prepay this bond. But in your current situation with growth, I just don't see that we're going to prepay this bond anytime soon. And you guys may feel differently than that. But in the absence of a plan to prepay the bond, I think it makes sense to go ahead and lower the rate and take as much savings as we can. So the plan is to bring the best offer back to the board on July 7th. But again, Jennifer Houston and I discussed it, and we just didn't want that to be sprung upon you on July 7th. We wanted you to have some idea what this item was ahead of time. So that's our basic plan, but we are open to any feedback that you have and can alter if we need to.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Tom? Hearing none, we will vote on this. I think I'd rather pull this and not have it on the consent agenda.
Right.
So that, okay, good. We'll just vote on that separately. And thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Tom,
Tom.
thank you so much for sticking with us and all the great things that you do to help us save money for the district.
I'm happy to do it.
Yes, sir.
All right. Next on the agenda, we have the millage rate.
Yes, ma'am. And
Michael, are you going to do that also?
I am. We've talked about that pretty good bit at the last work session, and we decided that tonight would be the night we wanted to go ahead and make a decision on the tentative. Again, this isn't the final, but the tentative rate, so we can move forward with some town hall meetings and all those things. So at this point, I believe Jennifer did a good job talking us through all this. We are bringing to you all, we've been at 18.5 for well over a dozen years now. Mill rate, we don't feel like it's a good time to go up, definitely, even with the up to 11% cut we may be seeing coming from the state. So we would leave that with y'all to make a decision on.
All right. Is there anybody on this board who thinks we need to raise the millage rate, so to speak, now? Is there anybody, given the fact that we're looking at an 11% decrease in funding from the state, who believes that we need to lower the millage rate? Speak now. Okay, it looks like the general consensus is that we accept the school superintendent's recommendation to leave the millage rate where it is. Am I hearing that correctly? Does anybody disagree with that?
So moved.
Okay.
Lynn,
We'll come back to that vote after when we come out.
okay.
All right. Very good. Next, we'll go in. Well, we need authorization for committees to meet. We'll do that at the board meeting. And at this point, I guess we need to go into executive session to discuss or deliberate upon the appointment, employment, compensation, hiring, disciplinary action, or dismissal, or periodic evaluation or rating of a public officer or employee, or to interview applicants for the position of superintendent. I'll need a voice vote on this. Let's just go down the line here. District 1.
Yes.
District 2.
Yes.
District 3.
Yes.
District 4,
Yes.
District 5 is me, yes. District 6,
Yes.
all right. And our at-large folks, I need three voices here.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. We will go into executive session.
All right, give us just a moment here to cut off the live feed so we can go into the private session for personnel. We'll let you know when
Thank
we're
you.
back.